On June 18th, 2005, I stood and watched as the most beautiful woman in the world walked down the aisle of Wilson United Church in Marguerite, Cape Breton, and said those words that would ever change my life. The words, "I do." And when she did that, I became her husband. But not only that, I became a father and grandfather as well. Now, becoming a stepfather is not like being a father. For one thing, it happens pretty quickly. Just like that. One moment, you're single, but as soon as you sign that registry, you're surrounded by children of varying stages of development. There's no slowly growing into your role, no 9 months of anticipation while your wife gets larger than you and changes the color in the nursery 8 times. The other is that children might already have a man in their lives who they call father. And that can make things awkward, messy, potentially very difficult. But Proverbs 20, verse 7 says, "The righteous person lives a life of integrity, and happy are his children who follow him." These children have now been placed under your care. And whether you like it or not, what a stepfather does will have a direct impact on their lives. So what has happened is that you've taken a difficult job of being a parent, or in this case, father, and you've made it 10 times harder by becoming a stepfather. And if that is the case, let us try to make this as positive as possible. I'm speaking about this today simply because while I was preparing for Father's Day, I bumbled across a statistic that says only 25% of children live to their maturity or adulthood in the family of their origin, which means 75% of our children these days grow up either with a single parent or in some kind of blended family. So to talk about the traditional family, I guess I'd only be talking to 25% of the population. So today, I will confess that I'm not the best stepfather in the world, but I have learned a few things over the past 12 years, and if I had Doctor Who's time-traveling spaceship, the TARDIS, there's a few things that I'd like to go back in time and tell myself. The first is, don't try to force the love. You can love the Force. That makes you a Star Wars nerd. But don't try to force the love. Please understand that no matter how kind, nice, completely awesome you might happen to be, they're not your kids. Their mother chose you. They didn't. It's tempting in step families for the adults to want the kids and step siblings and the step parents to all love each other as soon as that registry is signed. But for the most part, that's unrealistic. You can't make relative strangers who do not choose each other to love each other and act as a family overnight. Perhaps over time, but not overnight. Often, the children are deeply wounded by the circumstances involving the breakup of their original family. For many, building a new relationship is threatening to them. They've seen a family that they've invested their love and their hope in their entire lives fall apart. Why would you want to try that again? Now, they might not be thinking about it quite intellectually like that, but it does go through their minds. Time is the best healer. And time is the only way to build a relationship. As a stepfather, if you fish or golf or do other hobbies where it's appropriate to ask your stepchild to come along, not only does this give the child a chance to see what you enjoy, to see you in the midst of your passions, but it gives mom a break too. Now, don't force the child to do whatever you ask. He or she might not want to go fishing or might not want to help you rewire the house. If that's the case, don't force it. Given time and your enthusiasm, the child might come around to trying it, but if he or she is never interested, then it might be simply that they don't want to spend their entire day in the hot sun with fish guts on their hands. It might not be a reflection on you, but just of their own interests. Pushing the child to do things he or she hates just to prove that you're buddies, well, that'll probably backfire. Instead, keep looking for common ground until you find an activity the child would like to share with you. For me and Amy, our middle daughter, it was Harry Potter. Whenever a new movie would come out, I'd get tickets to the first midnight showing. When we were in Tabasentak, it was about a 45-minute drive to see the movie. We'd drive all that way to see the movie. Amy would talk all the way up about this scene or that scene, or who would play this character or that character, or if Neville's ears would be that much bigger. Who knows what she would talk about. We'd wait in line for hours. We'd just get our seat, then she'd want to go get popcorn, so we'd end up losing our seat. And then on the way home, she'd talk until she fell asleep. Now that she's married and lives hundreds of miles away, I find myself really missing those days. As a stepfather, it's easy to use mom as a shield to avoid getting close to your stepchildren. Take some alone time with your stepchildren to interact with them, and you'll find that your bond will grow. Number 2, don't let your stepkids feel rejected by you. Always remember that when you're upset at their behavior, they feel your dislike far stronger than they would feel the same anger from their own parents. This is because you don't have the history or the bond with them that tells them deep down that you love them and care for them. Nobody likes feeling rejected or not loved or not cared about. And kids, especially teenagers, are always ready to feel rejected. None of us like to feel that way. In fact, it's often why we as adults become angry with the step-family system. But really, we cannot expect a child or teenager with raging hormones and limited life experience to figure this out, to do the right thing. Just for a second, imagine that when you were a child, you were living with an adult who you knew didn't really love you. Then imagine how it would feel if that adult was angry with you and gave you the glare that we give when we're mad at someone. My stepmother, she hated me. I always did my best to toe the line because I always felt that if I stepped out of place, if I mouthed off, if I did something wrong, if I didn't get straight A's, I'd be kicked out of the house and I'd never see my father again. Whether that's true or not, that's how I felt. Whether it was true, that was my truth. You see, when our parents are angry with us and give us that look, at least we know that they love us. That parent-child bond goes a long way. But this bond doesn't extend to you and your stepkids and can leave them feeling rejected. Try to talk with your stepchildren about their behavior in a way that makes them feel heard and understood. And when you can talk with your stepchild from a place of understanding and a place of calm, it can go a long way to developing that bond of love between you. Number 3, don't take on the role of disciplinarian. I remember when Ruth and I were going to get married, I bumbled into the conversation where Ruth and Amy were talking. I don't know if you know this, Ruth. Anyway, I remember Ruth saying to Amy, "So, when we are married, JD is going to be living with us. Are you okay with that?" "Sure," she said, "as long as he doesn't tell me what to do." Pure and simple. I'll live by the house rules, just not by his. In the traditional family, the father was the head of the household, and one of the many jobs that came with that title was that of disciplinarian. And how many of us, as we were growing up, were told, "Just wait till your father comes home"? As a stepdad, you might expect that your wife and her kids will put you on even footing now that you've been married and moved in together. You expect that they will welcome your ideas about disciplining or about how the family should function. Your wife might even encourage it and want to be the disciplinarian. And lots of women don't like that role and don't like the attitude that sometimes goes with it, and gladly want to turn it over to the shiny new stepdad. My advice to you is don't do it. A step-parent should not be the primary disciplinarian until he has built a level of trust, of love, and care with the children. That may not be for several years if the children are young, and if the children are older, it might never ever happen. When you're a stepfather, you're not starting from scratch. This family has its own norms, its own values, its own priorities, its own ways of doing things that might be completely different than the way that you did things when you were growing up or the way that feels right to you. Mom and the stepkids have worked out this living arrangement over years. That may not make much sense to you at first, but makes lots of sense to them. And if you're not careful, you can find yourself resented for the very role that you thought that you were here to fulfill. Instead, work with your wife to develop household rules with consequences. These rules should include what everyone in the house needs to do, whether it's keep the living room clean, clean up the dishes after eating, whatever. And rules for each child. When those rules are broken, you can remind them of the rule. You can warn them. You can perhaps even give them advice about how to do it. Deal with major disagreements out of earshot of the kids, but let mom be the disciplinarian. Keep in mind that living together may represent changes children were never ready to make. So changing how they do things might be met with resistance. And if there's a fall guy to be had, you might be it. Next, be prepared for behavioral problems. I remember on our wedding day, Allison, our oldest, was very emotional. Now, while I somewhat expect that kind of weepy behavior from moms or grandmoms, I wasn't expecting it from Ruth's 20-year-old daughter. After a while, Amy told us the reason Allison was so weepy and emotional was that this meant her mother and father would never ever get back together. It's likely at some point that you will feel like your stepkids are rallying against you. It could be when you move in. It could be when you try to take on the role as the dad. It might be when you appear to be better than their bio dad, when they assume that you hate their bio dad, or when they come back from a visit with their dad and they feel strong loyalty towards them. How can I love him but accept this guy at the same time? They may act out when you get married because they will know for certain that their fantasy about their parents getting back together will never happen. And deep down, pretty much every child has that fantasy. Turbulence between you and your stepkids can come in forms of acting out, defiance, talking back, not adhering to rules. Rarely is a child evolved or mature enough to handle the complex feelings that come from being in a step-family. Of course, you're going to feel your feelings of hurt and anger. And when the kids act out, you're going to feel a loss of control. No one likes that kind of feeling. I cannot tell you how many times anyone in the role of step-parent will throw up their hands in the air and say, I can't take one more day. But take a deep breath, and take a step back, take another deep breath, and take another step back. And keep doing that, but stop before you get to the door or a set of stairs. Then take some time to think about what might be going on for the child at this time. Most kids wish their parents stayed together, so they don't have to live in two different households, so they don't have to feel split. Their loyalties being to mom or dad or to you that are uncomfortable. So they don't have to hear one parent or step-parent talking badly about the other parent. These pressures are often far too difficult for children. And what appears to be resistance might really be just trying to deal with the changes in family roles. If you can talk with your stepchildren without being accusing, you might be very surprised what you end up hearing. Next is don't take it personally. When Amy and Alison lived here, every once in a while, I would have to look after the kids while they whisked their mom away for a mother-daughter day or a mother-daughter dinner or a mother-daughter shopping spree. I'm still waiting for my dinner, my shopping spree, etc. On Ruth's birthday, Alison would always call at the crack of dawn and sing happy birthday. Me, I'm still waiting for that too. Whenever they would show up at the door, quite often they would have a delivery from Tim Hortons with a big coffee for Ruth and one for themselves. And I'll leave it there. As a stepfather, you will inherently have an outsider role in the family. The fact is you don't share the same history as the members of the family. All the family traditions that have been built up over the years, you weren't part of them. Over time, you might be included, or you might have to develop ones of your own. But until then, don't take it personally. And also, if I can just add, don't make them feel the pressure. Amy got married last year, and one of the biggest problems that she had about the marriage was, what do I do with Dad? With her father showing up, would that make me feel bad? With me being there doing the service, would that make him feel bad? That was the turmoil this mature woman had. What to do about Dad? Until finally I had to tell her, whatever you want to do is fine with me. I love you, and I'm just glad I'm going to be there. No, I don't know if it calmed the nerves or anything, but we were both there. I can only speak for myself. I had a good time. And she's still married today, so it must have worked a little bit. The next is don't be Dad. One of the big things that separates stepfatherhood from fatherhood is that stepchildren already have fathers. Fathers that, chances are, love them very much. Those fathers can be complete deadbeats, but their kids will still love them to the moon. Fathers whose authority is much better established than yours. Whatever you do, don't try to step into his place. This means, first and foremost, don't ask them to call you Dad. It may well happen that the kids slip up and call you Dad, and that's a great feeling. But don't be selfish and demand it. I remember when Alison was living up here, she called me Dad, and then she got mad because I didn't respond. But I didn't know she was talking to me. It just kind of slipped out, and I guess apparently slipped right past me. But when I thought about it, it did say, wow, you know, maybe I have done something right over the past 12 years. If Dad plays baseball with them on Sunday or always took them to their soccer games, if it's possible and appropriate, let Dad continue to do this. Find your own special thing that you do with them. And finally, don't ever badmouth their dad. No matter how big a jerk he is, don't do it. Usually they'll take the side of the jerk and start resenting you. But even if they don't, you have no right to interfere in that relationship. Now I said don't be dad. But the next part is be a dad. I remember when Allison graduated from community college. Ruth and I were so proud of her. You know, we dressed up for the graduation. I wore a suit and my clergy shirt. And during the festivities, Ruth and Allison disappeared for a moment. When Ruth came back, I asked what was going on. Apparently, Allison was upset with what I was wearing. And I have to say, I kind of took that one to the nose, and I was kind of surprised, because I took great care to choose the outfit and thought that it was more than presentable. But then Ruth made it very clear. Allison told her that she didn't want me there as a minister. She wanted me there as a dad. While insisting on being called dad is a bad idea, that doesn't excuse you from actually being a dad. Act responsibly. Be actively involved in working out what is needed for the child's future. Talking to the mother first and then including the child where appropriate. Be there for the kids when you need them, when they need you. Share their joys and sorrows with them. Build them up as much as you can. Help them with their homework. Offer advice. Explain how things work. Organize their day. And so on. All the things you do if you, their actual father. And do that knowing that you probably won't get much attention or appreciation for it. But do it because it's the right thing to do. And they need that level of male commitment in their lives. Smoking, excessive drinking, recreational drugs have no place in the home with children in it. Now, this might not be politically correct. And maybe Justin Trudeau will come down and try to kick me. But the effects of secondhand smoke on young lungs to the acceptance of legal drugs as a norm, these are not good behaviors to model for your children. If you have problems with addictions to substances, seek help. If you must smoke, always smoke outdoors away from the child. Now, I see time is going on, so perhaps I'll just end this way. Being a stepfather isn't easy. No matter how hard you try, you might run up against resentment from your stepchildren or the biological father or both. No matter how much good you do, it might never be appreciated. But the Apostle Paul faced extremely hard situations, but in the end he was able to say, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, and I have kept the faith. Children are worth fighting for. So on this Father's Day, I encourage you, don't be the father that they want. Be the father that they need. Train a child in the way that he should go. And when he is old, he will not turn away from it. To which I can only say, thanks be to God, and amen.